Today we're going to have Mr. Mark Chambers and Scott Hishka from Sunterra Farms. Mark immigrated to Canada in 1995 and joined Sunterra Farms. He came from England with 6 years experience in swine production. Over the last 23 years, Mark has moved up through the company, managing various barns and locations. Mark is now the general manager of Sunterra Farms Canada, looking after the production from 17,000 sows. Mark's responsibilities include the production side, financial, and staffing, including spending a lot of the time on the foreign worker program. Mark resides in Lucan with his wonderful wife, which is me, and our children. Mark is a past member of the Red Deer Swine Technician Workshop Committee, a member of the Ag Labour Industry Council of Alberta, and the co-chair of the National Labour Task Force, and past chair of the Banff Pork Seminar. So please welcome Mark.
Thanks for that wonderful introduction, Marcia, my beautiful wife. So hopefully there's some brownie points. Scott and myself are going to be presenting here. There might be a few vices because he wanted to come up before me, so we had a little bit of a competitive feeding system at the table there. So, but thus far I've won him out. So I've got quite a few slides, so I'm going to try and whiz through it as quick as I can. Give you a little bit of background in Sunterra. We started in 1970 as PAC, brought the genetics over from England. We were the original PAC, and then in '98 we became Sunterra. We've got 13,000 sows in Alberta, 5,000 here in Ontario. We've also got a boar stud, some cropping, and we finished a lot of pigs in the US on our own pigs and under contract management. We got a meat plant, we got some retail locations as well, European style grocery markets, and we've just put up a new salami prosciutto plant in Alberta, and that's just up and running now. That's a joint venture with a company out of Italy. The company's called Solitaria d'Italia. We're also involved with building some greenhouses, and our company has, well, it's probably larger than that now, but more than 1,000 employees. So these are just a few of our locations in the west and in the east. In the last 2 years, our company, we've converted, by the end of this year, we'll have converted all of our 17,000 sows from stalls to pen gestation. So it's been a busy, very busy couple of years. This is one of the farms we did here in Ontario, 2,500 farrow wean. This was the other one, a sister farm, exactly the same. And I'm going to be presenting a little bit here on the 2 farms we did here to the loose house ingestible system, and at the end a little bit on what we did in the 3 farms that we purchased out west, which is 4,000 sows, to very similar to what Scott did. So a lot of this is redundant from this morning because Scott already talked about it. The most important thing that I can't emphasize enough is think about the layout. We went through the process. We didn't build on, we worked within the confines of our building that we had, and we came up with a layout, and this is where we ended up. And I guess to give a bit of background, when we looked at what did we want to do for loose housing, did we want to go shoulder stalls, did we want to put in an ESF? These farms, the equipment was completely wore out, all the feed systems, the crates, everything was wore out, so we knew we had to go in and replace all of that regardless of what we did. And the actual advantage we have with these farms is it's fully slatted. So if you rip out all the alleyways and all the stalls, you end up with a room that's full of slats. Now they weren't completely slotted, there were some solid parts of the slats. So that's when we decided ESF. And when we got to that point we said, okay, do we want the drive-through or drive-in back out ESF? We went through the whole process, had our staff involved with the process, and we looked at some different systems. And after a lot of conversations, we decided that the Gestall was going to be the best fit that we felt for our conversion, taking existing 2,500 sow herd and moving it over to ESF. And our biggest challenge was going to be we need to continue to keep production going at the same time. So that was probably the biggest headache we had. Now, fortunately, in these 2 farms, we did shrink the herd 3 years prior, and we cut back farrowings, and the reason for that was to increase weanage. So we went from about 17 and a half days to 22 days. So that created some space in gestation. So we had about a couple hundred spaces to work with, which really helped us. So that meant that we could empty a complete room and work on it at a time. And we did all of our renovation from inside. So that meant all the work, the contractors showered in every day, and everything was done from the inside. When we would pass, all the equipment went in and out through doors, exterior doors of the different rooms. This is just another print of the layout, but we spent a lot of time, we thought, enough time on the layout on the first barn, which we thought was quite good. And just to back up one slide, we ended up in here because we didn't need all pens, so we had 2 rows of crates in this room, and we ended up making this a gilt area with gilt crate or pens down here and some gilt pens here. And that's what that was. But on the second barn, when we did the Peterborough barn, we rejigged the layout, and this was kind of the layout where all the 4 big rooms ended up being all pen gestation. And we took our gilts that were here and here, and we put them over here. And what that kind of made things better, because there's a feed system here that now only runs the pen gestation, and all the crates are on a different feed system. Because what we've got in one farm, we've got the feed system that will run over the top of drop feeders multiple times a day, which it doesn't need to. But in the second farm now, they're completely separated. But I can't emphasize enough our headache that we had. Feed delivery is the most important thing in an ESF system, and the reason I say that is because in a conventional crated system that we work with today, the feed that is coming in this morning is tomorrow's feed. So if there's a problem with it, if it's hung up, if it's fridged in the bin or whatever the deal is, it's not a big deal. We fix it today and it's going to be tomorrow's feed. With an ESF system, it's today's feed, it's now's feed. So if it stops coming in at 3 in the morning, that means by 4 o'clock, sows don't have any feed, and that can cause problems and real frustrations. So when we redid our system, this is just putting our feed system in the hallway. So like I said, we went from pens or stalls, and we actually did more than just a conversion to loose housing, because everything was wore out. We replaced everything in the breeding gestation end. So all the crates came out, and in some areas we put new crates back in, because we keep them in crates for 35 days. And the other thing we did at the time is we tried to focus on, our goal has for a long time has always been to feed our sows ad lib from farrowing to breeding. So in our weaning room, where we wean all our sows, we ended up putting in ad lib feed pipes. So there's a sow in each crate, and there's they can get access to feed whenever they want, and this connects up to the feed system, and it can run multiple times a day and feed them ad lib. Now, there was a lot of work we had to do. As you can imagine, there was 6 inches of concrete poured for the front alleys between the troughs. And I should have actually took a pile of, or a picture of the pile of concrete that we did take out, because it was all went out the man doors with a wheelbarrow. So it was piles and piles of work. And the frustration with this farm is they poured this concrete straight on top of the slats with no plastic. So when we smashed the concrete out, there was a pile of slats that had to be replaced as well. So it's a heck of a lot of work. I mean, I say that lightly because I wasn't pushing the wheelbarrow. But another important thing to think about is the slats, because when we did our design, we knew how the slats were, and you can see in that previous picture here where this part of the slat is solid and the back part is slatted. So when we came up with our design, we wanted the solid area in the bedroom area of where the sows were going to lie. So that meant we had to pick all of our slats up and flip them 180 degrees. So that was a pile of work. Now in the first room, we did the first room and put all the slats down, flip them and build all the pens, put the sows in, and the one thing we didn't think about was how wide this gap here was. Because when it's in a crate, it's right where the crate sits, so it doesn't matter. But all of a sudden when it's in an open pen and you got a 1 inch wide gap, that's a little bit of a problem for sows in a loose pen, especially when you put 50 in a pen and it's a little bit of a rodeo to start with. So spend a lot of time focusing on the slat gap and making sure. The second room we pushed them all together and thought that would be better, then they were dirtier. So the last 2 rooms we had about a 1/2 to 3/4 gap, and that worked out really good. In some of the areas we did replace a bunch of slats. That was a bunch of work doing that because these were 10 foot long and 2 feet wide, and they all had to come in and out a man door, so piles of work. This barn was actually a little better in Peterborough. The Peterborough slats that we did, those slats were 10 feet long and 4 feet wide. So that was a real push. So we had a jig set up here that we could hoist the slats in and out from their spot. Did a lot of that. The other thing we did, we put the jet stall in, and normally when a jet stall is designed and you build it from a green field when it's brand new, this is how the pen shape should be. It was a little bit like it was spoke about earlier. We were working within the confines of our barn walls, and we had to do the best we could with what we had, and it wasn't like a greenfield build. So one other thing we had, the way we've got it set up is there's one pen this side and another pen the other side. Normally this would be an alleyway. So sows can have access to this here. They can jump up here, and as we found out after the fact, they were pushing these out. So we ended up just putting a plate over the top of this, just a galvanized plate, and it stopped the sows doing that. So it's just those little things as you work through renovation that you come up against, which is kind of annoying. This is a typical bedroom design of what our pens are. We put 50 sows in a pen, 3 feeders, and we've got these bedrooms. And you can see the solid area of the slat is in the bedroom area, and the slotted area is kind of what we call in the walkway. And the way that we've designed, they're not a square pen, they are more rectangular, but the jet stalls are in the middle, and the drinkers are at each end of the pen, this end and the other end. So the idea is they go in to feed, then once they've fed, they leave and they go away to drink. So it creates opportunity for sows that haven't eaten to go into the jet stall. And that's kind of what it looks like now, with sows in it. Ear tags was another thing that we had. Because with the ESS system, you have to have an electronic tag. And we're typical pig farmers, so we're cheap, so we wanted to buy tags and reuse them. Cut them out when we call the sows. And the first tags we got were the pig trace RFID tags with a premise ID. So we purchased them, went and tagged, and actually we did double tag 2,500 sows to start with. And then when we started culling the sows, we started cutting the tags out and then realized that they weren't reusable, you couldn't push them through. So that was kind of frustrating. So then we went and purchased the jet stall tags, and they are reusable. So, and against the advice we were given by jet stall, we wanted to do things quick and simple and cheap. We decided to put one tag in, and it seems for the most part to work. I mean, there's still sometimes the tag doesn't work, you gotta go and re-tag a side, but we just live and we work with using the one tag. So, we do get some visitors sometimes, from time to time, to have a look at what we do. Did you have a question, Joe? So, and this was shortly actually after renovation. It is amazing, once the sows have settled in, it is amazing how calm and relaxer are. They can, or I shouldn't say they are, they can be. So, 5 minutes, okay, I'll go fast. But, I'll whiz through this. Some important things is with going through a renovation, if you've got the room, breed more sows. You will need to breed more sows. It's not all roses out there. I don't care what system you put in, when you take sows that have spent their life in a crate and you throw them in a pen together, it's a rodeo, and you're going to lose some. And this is what happens. You can see with a crated system, our late fallout rate, so this would be your after the 6-week period, we're losing about 2% of sows abort, they ought to abort to death, and if something shows up. Then when we start taking sows that have been in loose pens, you can see what happened here. So our farrowing rate went through the toilet, and we had a bunch of empty farrowing crates, and we had a bunch of pigs that never arrived into the finisher barns. So breed more sows, it costs you more money. But looking ahead now, this is our latest information. I think I pulled this off too. This came out 2 weeks ago. You can see we are actually getting back to pre-renovation levels. So which means it does work. Once you get everybody trained. We're on this farm in particular, we're just over a year into the renovation now. So these sows have been through a couple times. so their social skills are getting a little bit better. It doesn't mean there aren't challenges. There's still challenges with it. These sows are still aggression. And the other thing is you're going to lose some sows or weeded anyway. And I think this is, we've seen this on every farm that we've converted, or most of the farms we've converted. We've got an increase in mortality. But there is good news on the horizon. Once they learn some social skills and get over it, the aggression becomes less in the pen. And I'll whiz through this one. This is very similar to what Scott presented the other day. This is another 4,000 cells we have in Alberta. The manager of this site went and visited a couple of places and Scott's, and we went from stalls. The difference on this one is this back alley is fully slatted. Scott on his had a concrete alleyway here, so this one bodes itself better to loose housing conversion, but the same thing. We shoulder stalls, not much different. And the difference in this farm is we actually converted, we took 10 or 12 sows, stalls, converted them, and we put 10 or 12 sows back. We put 1 for 1 on this one. Different genetics. I'm not going to say what's what, but I think there's a genetic component to how sows interact with each other. If you have an animal that's, it was talked about this morning, that's aggressive at the feeder, they're going to be aggressive with each other. So, and this one, it's pretty much a blueprint of what Scott did, but it's just a few more pictures of another barn that we converted. Did the same thing with a hospital pen. And I think there's one here. Is there a? Yeah. So this is a hospital pen that is very much the same as what Scott built. And it's in very slow motion. I can't make it any faster. So this one was the welder guy was pretty ingenious, and it didn't work very well. But it's all there in one place. They just slide it out, drop the bar in, and it works. And it's for the same reason Scott did it. You've got a sow in a pen, you can put her in there, you don't lose any space. This barn runs extremely tight for space, and makes it a little bit tough. So, final thoughts. Breed more sows. I can't emphasize that enough. Breed more sows if you can. Don't underestimate the time frame. Give yourself enough time. It's going to take time, especially when you've got 6 inches of concrete to haul out and many truckloads of it. And the big thing is spend the time training the staff and the sows. That's huge in an ESF system. The advantage is a competitive feeding is you throw them in the pen, drop the feed the next morning, and they don't know what to do. This system, they got to figure out how to get there, and it's not just the staff, the sows that have to figure it out. It's how the people have got to figure out how the system runs. It takes a completely different focus and mindset than it does. And I was told when we were renovating, make sure you have enough staff. It takes more staff than you think. And we have more staff, but it takes more staff than you think it takes. So it's just you could have 3 people. All you do is that. You don't do anything else. But of course, we kept the barn running. We produced 1,200 pigs a week the entire time we went through this whole process. So it's testament to the staff, and our farm manager is here today as well. I'm sitting down there, so she's the one that actually had to put up with the pain. So I think that's all I got. Thank you.
Thanks, Mark. We're going to hold questions until both Mark and